Good morning. Justin Trudeau may be about to see what his re-election campaign could feel like. The Prime Minister appears to be heading for a tense face-to-face with a powerful bloc of premiers at the First Minister's meeting. Catherine Cullen is going to lead off our coverage. She is in Ottawa this morning. Catherine.
Well, Heather, there certainly does look like there's going to be some tension at this First Minister's meeting. The meeting itself not until tomorrow, but the Prime Minister will be sitting down with the premiers tonight at a private dinner. He'll also be meeting with a few of them over the course of today. And already we get the sense that there may be some loggerheads here. One of the major issues, something we've been talking about for well over a week now, is the tension between Ottawa and primarily Alberta, but other provinces as well, around the issues and what both the Premier and the Prime Minister have called the crisis facing the oil sector. Now, Alberta Premier Rachel Notley, Saskatchewan Premier Scott Moe have both said they want this issue formally on the agenda for this meeting of premiers and the Prime Minister. And they are not the only ones who feel that way. Listen to what Manitoba Premier Brian Pallister has to say.
Well, I can guarantee you one thing. If the agenda doesn't change, the premiers will change the agenda during the meeting itself, because there are concerns, obviously evident in our oil-producing regions of the country that impact on every other province.
Now, it's not just specifically the question of oil production and oil prices. There are also questions about a new piece of legislation from the federal government that would change the way that natural resource projects are approved. People are not happy about that. But writ large, Heather, I think part of the concern is really about whether the federal government is simply going to be talking at the premiers. There's a whole host of ministers slated to talk to the premiers tomorrow, and they're worried that it's the federal government that's going to be dictating the agenda. Some of these premiers and provincial sources say they want to make sure that they will have time to get their own questions and concerns in at this meeting and not just be talked at.
And what is the government saying about that very thing?
Offering a lot of reassurance, saying, listen, there will certainly be time to talk about oil and gas. That it's something that Finance Minister Bill Morneau will be talking about in his portion of the agenda tomorrow. The Prime Minister also weighed in on this yesterday. Here's what he had to say.
I look forward to talking about anything the premiers want to talk about. We're looking forward to a broad range of discussions on whatever it is that they have as priorities. Including oil, of course. Natural resources are an essential part of our economy. We're going to be talking about that as well.
So there's perhaps, we can get pretty deep into the weeds here pretty quickly, Heather, about whether or not this issue is formally on the agenda. It's in Bill Morneau's portion of the agenda, but it doesn't have its own separate agenda item. But I think what all of this really tells us is that we are shaping up for something of a tense meeting. Sources telling CBC News that it's not clear that there will actually be any kind of consensus at the end of all this. And we've been talking about oil and gas. We haven't even gotten to the issue of the carbon tax yet, one that's been a contentious one for some time, something we may hear something about when the Prime Minister and Premier Doug Ford meet today, but certainly a lot more conservative faces around the table than there were in the past. So the potential for some tension here, I think it's certainly high.
Yes, those longtime allies, many of them out of office now, so it's a totally new dynamic to come, beginning with that private dinner tonight. Catherine, thank you, and we'll talk more about this later in the morning.